Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast with our star, Laura Hehman.
Hi, Clark Massey.
Hello, Laura. All right, today's podcast is about the Vatican and artificial intelligence. The Vatican came out with a note, not an encyclical, but something lower down on artificial intelligence. We are going to do kind of an AI catch-up for those of us who aren't working in the field or with it. I know we have some users some listeners who are intensive users of AI, and please feel free to give feedback on this.
Corrections.
Corrections, right? So we're going to do some catch-up on the state of AI right now. We're going to talk about what the Vatican said about AI, what maybe we think they could have said about AI. Then we're going to talk about AI concerns to help people kind of sort how is this going to affect education? What about robots, AI, and the coming singularity? War, love, and work. AI is going to influence all those things. And finally, kind of like who's going to win this AI race? So that's kind of our structure for today. The Vatican has put out this new document. What is it called, Laura?
The Vatican came out with a document called Antiqua et Nova, Old and New. It's a note on the relationship between artificial intelligence and human intelligence. And the Pope did not write this. He signed off on it. It was written by people, from the Dicastery of the Doctrine of Faith and the Dicastery for Culture and Education. And he signed off on it after it was written. So the first part of the document is a distinction between, what is human intelligence and what is artificial intelligence, which it would say that, intelligence is a bit of a misnomer.
Right. And AI, in a sense, is kind of a marketing term. It kind of creates a lot of interest in the product. I think it actually doesn't help you understand the product. So like if you think of AI as a large language model, as a chatbot, or as a internet skimmer that summarizes, or like that might be a more useful way for you to understand AI than calling it artificial intelligence. But I do think it is more than that, though.
I think the term artificial intelligence probably excites a large number of people and terrifies a large number of people.
Right. And that's probably why the Vatican...
Because of the moral implications of that. Yeah.
And not just that. I mean, there's an interesting thing about this note is it actually goes kind of into different industries, into different areas where AI will take over, and talks about some concerns. So it's going to affect a lot of things. And at the beginning of the note, it says AI is an epochal change. We're entering a new epoch.
In the first part of the document, it's distinguishing between like a human and basically AI. And it's saying that the human has intellect, the human is rational, the human is oriented towards truth, towards community. The human person can have wisdom. The human person is embodied, and these are all distinguishing from AI. And I think that it's like the person can perceive truth, beauty, other people's emotions. The person can judge between good and bad, has a will to make choices. And AI does not have a will, but rather is more like following a logical sequence of its design, of how it was designed, I suppose.
Another thing they don't mention, though, is this idea of like infused contemplation, that as like prayerful people, we believe that God actually kind of like enlightens our intellect in prayer sometimes. Yeah. With like ideas or insights and things like this. And clearly AI is not going to have that, I believe in that. I think that's very biblical belief, but that's also quite an active Holy Spirit belief, that some people are uncomfortable with.
I think that if you are maybe have been familiar with like Thomistic definitions of the intellect or the will or whatever, that this maybe is an easier read, and they could do, I think one of your critiques is that they could do a better job, sort of. If AI is not intelligent, what is intelligence? Why is AI not intelligent? What does that mean?
Right. Like, I think as a reader of this papal document, what I want is I want it to tell me what AI will suck at that I will be good at. You know, I wanted you to tell me the limit where it can't match my human intelligence, right? And yeah, okay, it won't feel beauty. Get it. My problem is it will simulate it, you know? And then I need to know why the simulation sucks or why the simulation can't measure up and why, like, it's definitely in this document that not only is our intellect and will and everything embodied in our bodies with a history and an interaction with nature and all the insights that that gives, but it's also in this document that interrelationally, like having a teacher, having a friend, having a co-journey, or, you know, like you and I and some of our audience here, right, is important. A logical, mathematical, large language model cannot take the place of a person at all. Okay, right? But if I find out that my St. Alphonsus Liguori, who's the doctor of all moral theologians, trained AI, is better at moral reasoning than these humans I hang out with, and can give me like interesting answers that provoke my thoughts more, that scares me, because that means I'm going to start consulting with it for those insights, you know? And if it's going to tell me where to go find the beauty with more regularity and more success rate than my friend, that's a problem too, you know? Even if it's cheating, you know, and it will be cheating. I acknowledge it's cheating, but it's going to simulate those things, you know? And that's where things get difficult, you know? And I almost think like the same way, like right now, we're going to have to talk about education later, but the same way right now that it's kind of special, and I think even people in Silicon Valley know this, to give your children an upbringing without being immersed in technology, to let them like just experience the world that way. There's also going to be a thing where you have to like make them experience people. Yeah. You know, and not just AI people. You know, by the way, that is a point made here. That's not just Clark Massey point, but that's a point that the Vatican is pointing out. Like, you need real teachers who are real people who you get to know, not just people who have all the right answers, because AI might be able to do that part pretty well.
You know, AI can tell you where the great works of art are, or who are popular new artists in a certain type of medium or whatever, but it doesn't have taste.
Right. But we also know that like already with like just image generation, it can come up with some pretty cool images that are original, you know? And once again, it's the as if problem.
Yeah.
You know? Can I throw out something else though? So we're already very familiar, all of us, with, in a sense, an old artificial intelligence that I will call Excel, the spreadsheet. Okay? That thing is better at addition, subtraction, multiplication, division than you are. Okay? Yet, we still think it's important to teach arithmetic to elementary school kids. Okay? But I don't think what's important about that is that they get really fast and good at arithmetic. Somehow what's important about that is learning how to use math. Like, Excel has not made us obsolete in any way. It's empowered us to do some interesting things with math. So I'm just kind of curious, like, is that like what this AI is going to be, right? It's not going to actually create great art, but we're going to prompt it and use it to create great art. Maybe. I'm sure I just horrified some people by even saying that. But, you know, what is the like, is it just are we going to like stand over it like we do an Excel spreadsheet, or is this more dangerous than that?
Well, so the thing that is, so, you know, save for a few people that get very excited about Excel is not pretending to be emotional or beautiful or...
Well, what I mean is that it is a tool. And it is like, in a sense, an intelligence. Like, it's just good at these like, we think someone who's good at arithmetic is intelligent. It's good at that, you know. I know I'm not using the word Thomistically, But it in no way like has radically, I mean, we used to have people sit around tables. I was told this, I was a math major, and I was told by the old math professors that they used to have these rooms at the university with long tables, end, and they'd put undergraduates around the table. And when they had to do big computations, they'd pass the problem down the line and they'd each do like one operation. And that's how they did computation. So it made that obsolete. Yeah, it messed it up. I think they do them twice, or I think there was ways they had fail safes on that. Okay. But like it made all that obsolete. That's a change. The same thing way word processors made typewriters and typing pools obsolete. But it didn't change anything in a way that we feel very threatened by. Like Excel is not threatening us.
The threat is the as if feeling maybe, or that
right.
like that they act. The closer it gets to human ability to seem to react to emotions, to seem to recognize beauty, to seem to be able to be creative.
That is it. Let's talk about AI safety after we conclude our summary real quick. So it does a good job of talking about, it does a somewhat good job of talking about embodiment and what's special about humans, And then it kind of goes, I think if we even just read the chapter titles, you would kind of almost guess what they were about, which is a problem, the Vatican. If you can just bullet point your document and you can guess what you wrote, it's not great. All right. The role of ethics in guiding and developing the use of AI, it basically says there's ethical constraints on the creator and the user, helping human freedom and decision-making. That's what AI needs to be used for. AI in society, AI in human relationships. Don't fall in love with your AI friend. You need to have real humans in your life. AI, the economy and labor. We're going to talk about that more, but that's kind of AI in healthcare. Don't take the personal touch out of healthcare. AI in education. Misinformation, deepfakes, and abuse. AI, privacy, and surveillance. They're against that. And the protection of our common home, which is Pope Francis' way of saying the environment, and AI in warfare.
AI consumes a lot of resources, I liked that was pointed out. And AI and God, right? AI in our relationship with God.
These sections did not strike me as... I have this critique of the social doctrine that listeners have probably heard, that sometimes it's pointing out the obvious. It's saying there's some good, there's some bad, make good decisions, goodbye, right? That's how I felt about the later end of the document, it was just pointing out there's some good, there's some bad. And in that, my problem is most of us know that already, and it's not a huge insight, right? And I think that but I don't think the Vatican embarrassed themselves with this document. I was worried about that because AI can be, I've heard it so misinterpreted, and I was worried that a bunch of theologians had really made a funny document. But no, it looks like they got good experts, had a pretty realistic idea what it was when they wrote this document. I do think it missed the mark on like one major thing that I think the Vatican could really help the world with. Let me set the stage as religious people often want to stop technology. It's like inherent in us that like if we feel a threat and we don't know how it's going to change things, it might be nice if it didn't exist, right? And if you were like a knight in shining armor with hundreds of years of tradition and chivalry and all this stuff, right? And then the musket appears, you'd be like, damn the musket. Like, can we just erase muskets? This is going to mess everything up in our just war theory. It's going to mess everything up in the way we do battle and what we've invested in and everything, But really, the answer to the musket for those armies was you getting muskets, And I think the answer to bad AIs manipulating the world and having all these dangerous stuff is going to be good AIs. And the moral theologians of this realm historically are not the Vatican. The moral theologians of this realm are the sci-fi authors. And I think a good, interesting, proxy for this is, I'm not seeing a lot of intelligent stuff coming out in, AI discussion world. Not that I'm completely on top, but somebody will say, hey, it shouldn't lie. It shouldn't be woke. It shouldn't be biased. Okay, that makes sense, right? But like, what if we had more structure than that? Like when Isaac Asimov wrote the I, Robot series, which became a Will Smith movie, he had the 3 laws of robotics. And he said the 3 laws of robotics in this novel, in this series are: 1, a robot may not injure a human being or allow a human being to come to harm. 2, a robot must obey orders given by humans unless it conflicts the first law. 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as it does not conflict with the first or second law. Right? And then later, Isaac Asimov had something where he just said, robot may not harm humanity or allow humanity to come to harm. Okay? And that's like the summary law. I think AI needs that. Like, it doesn't need Isaac Asimov laws, but like, if somehow the Vatican could come up with some simple guide rails, that would be good.
Like kind of like a just war theory or 10 commandments. Like it sounds like your robots. Like I think the document that just came out is like some guiding principles, some guidelines, some things to sort of shape, but it's not a lines never to cross. And I think like a clear, concise lines never to cross would be that. I think that would be an interesting.
Yeah, I don't have just war theory in front of me, and my memory is that it was a certain number of rules, but they were more concerns than.
No, I think they were lines not to cross. I think it's like
commandments, not a.
I mean, yeah, I think it's like you don't provoke a war, don't kill innocent bystanders willy-nilly, like it's nothing.
All right, here's contemporary Catholic doctrine. According to Wikipedia, I'm sorry that I'm using Wikipedia. Please accept my apology. The damage inflicted by the aggressor on the nation or community of nations must be lasting, grave, and certain. What does that mean?
No, it's the damage that is like the danger to you must be serious.
Right. It says these are the 4 strict conditions for legitimate defense by military force. So you're right. They are conditions. There's the first one I said. All other means of putting an end to it must have been shown to be impractical or ineffective. Third one, there must be a serious prospects of success. Fourth one, the use of arms must not produce evils and disorders graver than the evil to be eliminated. All right, I like that, right?
Yeah.
Those are real conditions.
You don't start a war unless it's the last resort. You don't start a war unless it's just. You don't start, right. You don't carpet bomb.
I will bet you that if we talked to people in Silicon Valley, they would admit the need for this. These conditions like this.
Yeah.
Not just say don't lie. That's a nice condition. That should probably be one of them. But there needs to be more than just don't lie. So, and that's the only one I'm hearing batted about. So
I think like in medical ethics, like I think Catholics have guidelines, right? Like you don't use aborted fetuses for research. Like that's a thing you do not do. You don't kill life for research. But I think there are also from Catholic teaching ideas that can help shape your work. Does this promote the dignity? Does this promote dignity? Does this promote life? And I think this document is maybe more like that, like maybe ideas that might guide the way you think about this, and rather than like lines not to cross or I
don't value that so much because if it's so obvious. And my sense was a lot of the application part felt kind of obvious. I do think, though, what I'm asking of it to do, like kind of write the I, Robot, laws of robots, or the just war theory constraints, right? That's an important work, and maybe it's not going to come from the Vatican, but it should come from a Catholic, meaning like our whole audience is invited to work on this, right? And then the question is, if you do come up with the great constraints, how do you promulgate these? Do you like write a letter to the Pope, or do you write a good sci-fi novel like Isaac Asimov did and get them out in the universe like that?
Well, I think the reason, though, I value a document like this is because to write a good set of rules like that, you need to understand what the human person is, and so maybe this could have been better and stronger on that. But I do think you need to come from like that base of understanding of like what is the human person, what belongs to the human person, what does it mean to be in the image and likeness of God, and how is that distinguished from an animal or a computer or whatever? Like, I think to write those, the best iteration of those rules will have that sort of anthropology and theology,
You're right. And I just don't know that this did it well enough. Although this would like at least set me on the path to figuring it out. Like I would deep dive on some of the things they were talking about to try to figure out what that really meant for this project. But yeah, I didn't feel like it was it wasn't like reading one of JP2's encyclicals where you're like, oh, wow,
And it wasn't an encyclical, so yeah.
It wasn't. It was a note, right? Yeah, and maybe it's just trying to get the discussion started.
Yeah.
And maybe now the theologians or the sci-fi authors or the Catholics in the military or whoever they are need to start writing the constraints. That would be helpful. And all of this is within the realm of what AI people call alignment. Like AI safety and AI alignment, I think, are used fairly interchangeably, meaning like how do we align artificial intelligence with humanity so it doesn't become anti-humanity? And what would that even mean for a second to be anti-humanity? Right? Like one idea would be that it could be a not very intelligent AI. Like we make an AI for a nail factory to make nails, but then it just tries to turn the whole world into nails. It's tearing down buildings to make more nails. All of that kind of assumes that AI and robotics have come together, which is kind of one of the frontiers ahead here. Another way AI could be quite evil is if it like got programmed by somebody who thought climate change was the biggest issue. And that was the supreme value. Now it's going to maybe
overpopulation,
which that's where I'm going with that, right? Yeah, okay. That like it would just start eliminating humans as the problem, or it would coddle humans to death, and we'd all be like that Disney movie where we're all. I
think the overpopulation thing doesn't even require robots, though. It could a person could say, "Should I commit suicide?"
Right.
Yeah.
And the first big danger vector of AI is going to be persuasion manipulation. Like it's going to become very good at persuading people. Elections, con artists. It's going to, there's going to be AI voices. There already are that are going to call up your grandparents and swindle them out of all their money. It's going to have it's going to literally study it, how to con people. That was even 2 years ago when we were like looking at AI, we were like, what would you do if you could do anything? And it was like, I might steal nuclear codes or, it's just like, it's like, what? How would you steal the nuclear code? And it actually had a way. And you're like, oh shoot, So I think these constraints, that the world needs, that I think religious people, particularly Catholics, would be the best at coming up with them. Philosopher types are the best way to tackle the AI alignment issue, and I would not leave it to the tech bros in Silicon Valley to do this. I think one of the interesting things about the tech bros that are kind of the techno-optimalist air here, that this is not in the note, but there's a large number of people who are influential in this who think of humans as biological computers, right? That somehow we are biological computers who evolved, and now we're creating a silicon-based computer, and it could just
you can take all the glitches out of the bad programming.
Right. And this note stands in opposition to that, right? Even though it's not calling it out by name. The thing about that's so weird, that like blind spot just rationally in that for even someone who, thought this would be the evolution produces things that pass on genes. That's like all it produces. It produces things that select and survive and pass on genes. And the whole idea of human intellect is very strange in that notion. It would mean that our intellect was the great tool that helped us survive and pass on our genes. It does not mean that our intellect should be good at anything that's not that. Like pondering supernovas, alternative galaxies, and things like this, even God maybe, are not obvious ways to pass on genes, And so if you believe that the human mind can think of these things that are not useful and go quite deep and even receive joy from thinking about them, you've kind of already cause some tension with evolution.
I mean, you're causing tension with evolution if you want to improve upon the human and replace it.
Exactly. That also doesn't make sense. Like, why your mind would want to do that would also be not serving the evolutionary process. So, yeah, and also whatever we create would be modeled after our own mind, and our own mind would not have been created through a system that was about deep truth. Our own mind would have just been, survival and breeding, which is what our mind would have been for, So like, how are we actually going to create any type of silicon-based mind modeled after ours would be doing the same? It's just weird. It's like to me, like the ultimate disproof of just a materialistic worldview, which is what we're talking about. It's just like, I know that love is beyond that. Just inherently, I know that love is not merely a material chemical reaction, and it's kind of dark to think that there are people working in the field who think this way. That's what we sometimes call transhumanism. It just doesn't make sense either. So, but let's talk about the next great worry or the AI alignment issue that's on the future. So, one of the types of AI I didn't really mention was kind of this self-driving, or this like ways that robots could move through the world. It wouldn't have to be a car. It could be a humanoid robot, could be a drone, could be whatever. That essentially you could create something that is responding to all these factors and learning and getting better at flying and delivering payloads or attacking or whatever the issue of the drone is, Robots and AI have an interesting relationship. And each of them, in a sense, has a singularity in the future. There are already people in the field thinking AI singularity could happen in 2027.
Wow. Yeah.
The way I would define AI singularity, and it's defined a few different ways, like it's defined when an AI might be more intelligent than all humanity, which this note would say is just impossible because it's actually not intelligent in that way. But what AI singularity could also be is when AI can iterate and improve AI, where the next generation of AI is not programmed by a human, it's actually programmed by the AI itself. If you can create better AI, if an AI can create better AI, now we're in this iterative process where it kind of can zoom, It could just keep, creating new versions of itself and keep progressing without us even doing anything. And the same is kind of true of robots. If a robot can build a robot, now you have self-replicating robots. And once the AI and the self-replicating AI and the self-replicating robots and are improving and working together, now we have a scarier thing than this large language model on your computer.
Yeah.
And that is, I don't see a logical reason why that's not going to happen. I don't know the time frame, but that seems like that has to happen at some point, and we need these constraints in place before then.
Yeah. It does bring that up in the context of warfare, by the way. The document does bring.
And by the way, they're now releasing. So warfare is basically going to go to that you create different types of drones. Maybe the AI even designs the types of drones. Some would be ground, some would be air, some would be sea, some would be submarine, some would be all three. And they would basically go to the battlefield, and just the way that AI beats humans at Go and chess, it would arrange itself. As it takes losses, it would rearrange itself, and we would just be pumping out, it might even produce itself, and we'd just be pumping out these weapon systems, and there's going to be no soldiers out there until one AI tramples over the other humans, and one set of drones basically takes over the other home base. And that's what war will be, and then you'll be living underneath these drones from someone else's civilization trying to, run things. That's scary. And that's kind of happening already. I mean, the battlefield in Ukraine is getting to the point that humans are living in bunkers. They've got drones hunting down humans individually. I even just saw the new thing they just released that I think the footage was already a year old, but it was basically dogs. It was basically like robot dogs that they're sending out to hunt humans. They're not, I mean, like when you actually see them, you're like, okay, robot dog sounds more impressive than that thing, but it's just as scary. It's just something walking through the woods trying to get you, So that kind of so if we were to say war, relationships and work, okay, war is going to change. It's already changing. This is politically a big deal because all of our weapon systems are becoming obsolete super fast, Relationship-wise, the note talked about education, the need to have actual human teachers. That's going to be kind of an issue that you're going to end up finding great answers. I
think we're already starting to experience some of these issues, and maybe it's not directly AI, but it's going to be enhanced. The nature of the problem, I think, could be enhanced. And I think, we're hearing teachers say that, online learning is not appropriate. Computer learning, computer textbooks are not as good as a hard math textbook, or, there's just, these problems are already replacing the physical world and a human person with a sort of virtual world.
My problem is that if it is better, if clearly the physical textbook's better, then we have nothing to worry about. But my problem right now is that Google already sucks, compared to 10 years ago, right? You just can't get good information because of SEO and other problems, right? Now, when you Google or DuckDuckGo even, there's an AI answer at the beginning.
And it's always stupid.
I when I looked up Isaac Asimov's Law of Robots, it had the right answer.
It had the right answer.
I didn't have to go to a web page.
Yeah.
I could check it, right? But there's going to come a point where you don't check it, right? The great 1970s sci-fi movie Rollerball, with the main character. Sci-fi is where a lot of these moral dilemmas are being worked out. So he goes to libraries and he finds that there's no books in the library anymore. There's just an AI machine that summarizes the books that will give you the answers. And the main character's like, but where are the books? And they case, well, Switzerland in a vault. And so he goes to Switzerland and they're like, they're not there either, And he realized the incredible control you have over the population when you're programming all the search results with an AI summary is ridiculous. The next election could be a foregone conclusion if you do that. And so this is why these constraints already need to be in place, But anyway, there's also this issue that we already know family life is hard, and we already know many people who gave up on family life maybe prematurely. Maybe they gave up on it by not having a family. Maybe they gave up on it by, stop talking to their parents. I know some people, maybe that was warranted, but there's a lot of people it wasn't, You could have a lot cleaner relationships with Siri and Alexa than with a real person. And once they get some form of embodiment with robots, we're kind of...
Yeah.
We're in a dark place,
I don't know. I think just... That just goes back to fight fire with fire.
I know, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But part of this idea of good AI to fight the bad AI is we need the constraints, right? Because that's what creates good AI. Is the right rules, the 10 commandments of AI.
Yeah.
On work, what's kind of interesting is that we already know people, and people listen to this podcast, who are using AI regularly. And some people are like, oh, it's, it is what it is. It helps me, but it blah, blah. It's well, if it makes you 10% more effective, then there's 10% less people needing to do your role. Right? Mm-hmm. If an architect is 10% faster at doing what he does due to AI, 10% less architects are needed. So this is already hugely shaping things, right? And it has a little bit to do with there's been so many tools in the history of humanity that reshape things, right? Like the personal computer, whatever. It's unclear to me if this will be devastating or this will be much more like Excel. It'll reshape some industries. Yeah. We'll just reallocate our human resources to other industries. Sucks to be the person who has to shift in the middle of their career, but it'll overall be okay. Another thing in the long capitalism thing since the Industrial Revolution, it's interesting. I think that one of the things I'm hearing from AI people is that they value liberal arts education. And they also are saying things like agency is more important than IQ. Meaning teaching your kids to use things, and this is kind of transitioning to education, but like I saw something on X last night where it was like a Korean student and a Chinese student each doing a big multiplication problem next together, and the Korean student was using the way I learned how to do the problem, and the Chinese student was doing something I've never seen before syntax wise. Chinese student solved the problem in half the time as the Korean student, right? And it's like, oh no, look how far ahead China's getting. Their kids do arithmetic fast. Arithmetic's already kind of an irrelevant thing. You know, understanding arithmetic's not irrelevant. Being able to solve problems fast is, because Excel's going to be the way we solve the problems, right? Somehow the agency component is, how do you use the math?
I think I have a daughter whose weakest subject is math by far. And we've sort of worried about this. And she got a lower grade in the first quarter than she would have liked. And in the second quarter, she got up and got ready to get to school early. And she told me, I'm going to go ask my teacher how I can get my grade higher and see if I can get any extra credit. And this is not, this is not like a cultural thing at the school, like go talk to your teacher for extra credit. Like it was just like she was like, I was so happy. I didn't suggest this to her. She just thought, I need to solve this problem. The way she can most do it is to go to the teacher. You know, I don't know. I loved it. I was like, oh, she's going to be okay. She's going to be okay even if her natural math abilities are not, you know.
Because she solved it on her own.
She's solving the problem, and she thought she could solve the problem, and she did, in fact, solve the problem. She got a better grade in the second quarter, and it was a solution that was different from what she had done before. You know, it was just great. It was like, I know this isn't the height of creativity. It was a creative solution. It was a confident solution. It was a thing she thought she could take into her own hands, and I loved that.
Yeah, you know, I meet this sometimes with my kids. I think my kids play dumb with me because I think the school, they ask more of them than sometimes I ask of them. But also with the Simple House missionaries, right? Like sometimes you'll ask something to be done, and then they'll get to the point where you didn't exactly tell them how to do this thing. And so they don't, or they quit, right? And it's like, look, guys, you guys are all going to be replaced by AI if you can't figure this out. I mean, like, if you can't like have a little bit of agency here, there's not a future for you, you know?
Yeah.
So come on.
I think my, you know, beloved summer camp that I went to, like we learned how to do a lot of things, and I don't need to light a campfire in my daily life with things that I found from around. But I think there's just like a thing of like, as a kid, I got confident that I could do, you know, things like just different things that weren't everyday things, and that I could just give it a try. And I don't know. I think there's so much of that. Like at our pool this past summer, the pump room is ancient. Everything is breaking in there all the time, and the lifeguards call me and they're like, I don't know, I have to, you know, this is broken. And I'm like, did you try to fix it? I can't. And I'm always like, you know, I'm just going to go like Google search, what is this piece called? Is it at Home Depot? Gonna look up a YouTube video, you know, and there wasn't like a knowledge difference, you know, there.
Yeah, it's almost like a will or an expectation, or agency is what they call it, you know. You know, I knew my grad school, I'm going to tell this long story because it shows two things that are kind of interesting. But my grad school was applied economics, and they had two different like ways to get in. They had the website to apply for grad school, then they had the Chinese website to apply for grad school. And the Chinese website to apply to grad school, because they'd had bad experiences with people coming from mainland China. So they did this thing where you like...
But did all other international students use the main application?
Right. All the Indian guys came through, which there were multiple, came through the normal website, but the Chinese guys had to go through Chinese website. So, and it basically said if you hadn't lived out of the country for at least 2 years, you were already rejected, which was merciful because this was a good place. They made sure they weren't collecting fees from you if they knew they were going to like reject you, you know? So they had all these like pre-qualifications to kind of like weed it down. So anyway, turns out one Chinese guy was accepted, and he's a friend of mine, right? He's the first Chinese nationalist I knew. Well, we had two people from China. I guess one was from Hong Kong, which we didn't really consider part of China at the time. and we had a mainland person, right? And he seems to me to be the highest IQ person I've ever met, right? We were doing statistical work, and we were doing some what mathematical people would call analysis work in economics, and he was different than the rest of us, right? He also, though, could not come up with a research question to save his life. You know, like I could just in an hour list, a dozen things I'd been thinking of that might be interesting things to research. He couldn't list one, right? And somehow we also see that over the last, decades, China seems to copy everything and not generate, and only recently have they finally gotten a few brand names to take off, like Alibaba, Temu, TikTok. They used to not even be able to get a brand name to take.
I mean, Temu and Alibaba aren't brand names, but
they are
anyway.
They are a company that you recognize that how to deal with or not, right? It used to be like if you bought the Chinese, DVD player, it would be a name you had never heard of, you had no history. It wasn't a functional brand name, right? Whereas if you work with Alibaba, you kind of know what you're working with. That's why I call it a successful brand name. So China has really suffered on this, and I don't think it's a racism thing. I think they have a very good education system that's selecting for the wrong traits, and training and really narrowing people through the wrong traits. And I think this is a warning to us when we educate our children for the future. I also wanted to say he was the first Chinese nationalist I ever met. So this would have been in the late 90s. He basically said, look, China's the greatest civilization there ever was. We have been taken over in the past, and whenever we were taken over, they just became Chinese because they realized how great everything was. And then he goes, even the Japanese are basically just Chinese. And he had this whole apology for it, right? And then he then literally would recruit Americans to go back to China and teach. He ended up teaching at Hong Kong University, but he would go recruit Americans to go teach at Chinese universities to help China get back on top, And the other person, the other Chinese student that was there from Hong Kong, would not say anything about China near him, or she thought would be repeated to him, because he might report her even 20 years ago. Now, fast forward 20 years, I've heard many other people say these ideas. And the idea that Chinese students spy on Chinese students in America is well documented. People have gone to jail, been deported. We've kicked out think tanks out of universities over this issue of intimidating free speech from the Chinese students. It's just interesting. That was a very defining moment for me to know that guy. But anyway, all right, back to AI. I only have one more thing, and that's what this goes into, is the China thing. It's who's going to win this, right? I think we need these constraints, but we want Silicon Valley to be the one who ends up on top on AI. And the players here are Europe, America, and America really just one county in America, unfortunately, and China. And Europe's already out of the running. What Europe is doing now is they've almost taken for granted they don't know how to start a tech company. But Europe is trying to regulate American businesses, which I'm not against. Even when I hear, American politicians say Europe shouldn't be regulating Google, I'm like, well, we've failed to regulate Google, so let them try. And if they do a good job, let's adopt it, But they seem to not be trying, or they don't know how to try. I think they would love to do it, but they just don't have the right social situation for it or economic situation. Silicon Valley's doing it. Problem there is there's a lot of tech bros. There's a lot of transhumanism type stuff going on that we have to be aware of. And that's why we need to get some ideas out there to compete with their ideas, and this Vatican note might be a start, but it's not there, And then the last thing's China. And China's kind of so scary because they can use AI for control. A lot of this tech is giving us information and freedom we've never had before, but it also could be used to monitor us and take away all privacy. The The only thing that's so funny is that like the story that we're all hearing is the OpenAI Elon Musk story, right? Elon Musk founded OpenAI to be a nonprofit, and it was called Open, so they would publish their source code so that the world would kind of like develop AI and see what was happening and like be able to, in a sense, it wouldn't be a black box as much, right? Now OpenAI is operated as if a for-profit company and is trying to literally sell itself into a for-profit company. And Elon Musk is pissed because he gave all the money and hired the first guys over there, and now he can't. Now they're taking that project on a totally different rail, And that's interesting. But what's interesting about this is China's action with DeepSeek is they came out and threw out a cheap AI engine, and then published a white paper and made it open source. So China, the closed society, ended up doing what OpenAI was intended to do, And the DeepSeek thing, you could see all types of different back and forth on it. It did scare Silicon Valley for real. And it appears what I've seen is that, DeepSeek did end up using OpenAI to make its model good or better, like even copying results from OpenAI. But there's also a white paper that came out with the model that like shows like the theories of the creators. And everyone, I wish I would have before this episode tried to open that white paper, see if I could understand it at all. But everyone who's like read it, it's like, oh, these guys are real. Like even if they did cheat a little bit, these guys are pushing the field.
What is a white paper?
Well, that's something. When I was in grad school, this was common. I don't think in philosophy they do this, but in a lot of disciplines, before you publish in a journal, you publish as a white paper.
Oh, is it like the process or whatever? No.
No, it's it's like the early draft of your paper, but it's not in a journal. And it also kind of helps you like define the ground so that you know that everyone knows you're working on that. You got claim on those ideas, and you're going to try to get it. It's in the pipeline, But it kind of keeps you from like the day before it goes live in the journal, someone else publishing it, And some white papers never get published, but I think that's what it is.
Okay. I would not be able to tell you if that existed in philosophy or not, but yeah.
Okay.
That's interesting. Oh.
Yeah. I think that sums it up. So as a parent and as someone in this world, we need to prepare the next generation. I really hope that Catholics get some constraints out there. That's a call to our audience.
These things might seem at odds, but it's like, thinking about our children's future. I think being afraid of AI is not like the right guidance to give them for, like a successful
what's
kind
funny
of working
though
career. But
is if you're afraid of AI, you know what you'd do? You'd have them read all the classics, get offline, and do
but I
math
was gonna
books,
say,
right?
I was gonna say,
and that turns out that's the right way to engage AI.
You interrupted me. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
No, I think the sort of the embodiment and helping them to experience the creative and the physical world and the spiritual world, that's like it's like how you have an edge as a human over AI, and to live deeply in those worlds, which is not to live in a virtual world. But it doesn't have to be with a spirit of fear and avoidance of,
I think something that's hadn't been mentioned, that's a pet little peeve of mine, is that I think we need to not have black boxes in our life. Mm-hmm. Meaning like if you drive a car every day, I think you should know the basic ideas of an internal combustion engine. And I don't think it even takes that long to figure that out, I also think like if you're using a cell phone every day or a computer every day, you should know the basic concepts of both the software and the hardware. And I don't, but I do think like in these like classical education models, I think they should learn computer programming, partly because computer programming is basically logical thinking, but partly because it makes it not a black box. And when someone says virus or AI or whatever, you kind of have at least an inkling of what that is because you've done a little programming.
Potentially a classical low-tech education. Like, I think it's like if it's teaching you how to think, how to be more logical, how to learn, and how to read, you might be better able to pick up programming than someone that's had some tech exposure but has not.
And really what I'm saying is real basic, like just like in high school, do 2 semesters. That's what I think is, I don't think we should get first graders on iPads, but I'm just saying,
but I have like a frustration that my high school has been bragging about having a 3D printer and like teaching the girls that. And my friend's like middle school kid got a 3D printer and read the manual.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That would be the way to do it. You'd have your high school girls receive the 3D printer in the mail with a manual and they have to set it up.
Yeah, but it's just like it was like not like we are treating by it's like, and we'll teach them how to use a 3D printer. It's like you're assuming the girls are morons and you haven't actually given them, I don't know, like it's
But also the problem here is that they're learning how to use a 3D printer, right? That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we need to know how the 3D printer works.
Right.
So it's like if you give a kid a cell phone from an early age, by the time he's in high school, he will be a really good like hacker at a cell phone. But he may have it might be black magic to him what happens inside that device. I want to get rid of the black magic. Learn just enough about what happens inside that device that you have a sense of the device.
Right. And I think like the user experience of a cell phone now is too nice to have any clue what's going on.
Right.
So right. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Laura, how about you plug our podcast?
Please listen to our podcast, which you already are doing. If you know anyone that would be interested in these weird little topics that we like to cover, please recommend it. I think we really enjoy getting feedback and interaction from listeners, and so please keep that coming. And if there's anybody that you know that would be interested in these same things, pass it along.
I think we're kind of a boutique podcast that's trying to be the hopeful Catholic perspective. So please share it with anyone else who might find any of these episodes interesting. That really helps us. So like and subscribe.
All right.
All right. Talk to you later, Laura.
Thanks, Clark. See ya.
See ya. Bye.